Joining us now, Congressman from the 5th District of Virginia, that's Southwest Virginia, from Chatham, Congressman Robert Hurt, Representative. Great to have you with us.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me on your program.
You're one of 5 congressmen in Virginia that voted no on this cromnibus, all-encompassing spending bill, along with your colleagues Morgan Griffith, Dave Bratt, Whitman, Hurt, Griffith, Scott, and Dave Bratt. Now, we had Scott original on at 7:35 to 8 o'clock explaining his vote in favor of it, basically saying that a continuing resolution for 90 days would have solved nothing and it would have hurt the military because it would have gotten less money. You voted no. Why?
Well, listen, first of all, I respect Scott very much in his work that he does in Washington, and I've enjoyed serving with him, and would never criticize him. But I will say that I think that there is certainly room for difference of opinion on this issue, and while some of the things that certainly that he says, and certainly that there are negative consequences to failure to adopt a bill that will fund the government through September 30th. There's no question about that, and I agree with that. I also would agree that there are some things that were in that bill that were good. Certainly, if you look at the level of spending for the IRS, at the EPA, I mean, there are some very good things in that bill. So, first of all, it's not an easy vote. Second of all, I think there's room for disagreement, legitimate disagreement on the approach. But at the end of the day, it's up to each of us. I mean, I have one voting card, and it belongs to the 700,000 people that I represent. And I have to, each of us has to make a decision about how we represent our people and what we believe in our heart is the best thing for the people that we represent. And in my instance, I was unable to support the final bill because in large measure of the way that it was pursued. There had been a lot of work that had been done on the bill in terms of on the House side, but in terms of working through regular order, that is, putting all 12 appropriations bills through the House of Representatives, having the Senate do its work, and by the way, the Senate did nothing in the run up to adopting a budget, and then we get to the lame duck session because the Senate had not done its work, and what we end up with is the leadership works out a deal with the leadership in the Senate, Harry Reid and others, that gives us a 1,600-page, $1 trillion spending package and gives us 48 hours to consider it, and there are no opportunities to amend it, to really debate it in a meaningful way, and I just think that that's a terrible way to run our business, and so I was unable to support it for that reason. When I think about what I hear from my constituents in terms of the fact that we have borrowed $18 trillion, and we need to do everything that we can to get this country back on the right track, when we consider the fact that this president seems to be sashaying through the garden, spending money that's not authorized, and through these executive actions that he's taking. And I think about my constituents' concern about that. I was just unable to support it for those reasons. And so, what I hope is that we will not dwell on this for too long. I would have preferred to have seen a shorter extension into January. That's not what we got, although we will be able to revisit the Homeland Security portion of this. But once we get to January and February and we have established majorities in the House and the Senate, it's my hope that our leadership will think back on this vote and remember that they lost 67 Republicans. In order to run a majority, you have to have 218. You have to have 218 Republicans. And so it's my hope that in the 114th, when we have a better playing field to play on, that vote will, and I know it will be in their mind, because they know that if they want to operate with the majority, they're going to have to get to 218 votes.
Congressman, why did leadership lose 67 Republican votes on basically what was supposed to be their bill that they crafted?
Well, remember this, and then I think it's easy. It's so easy to forget this after such a victory on election night, and one that I think is going to be good for America. I'm excited about our prospects on 114th. I think we're going to be able to do some good things, and I think that we're going to be able to put some stuff on the president's desk that he for so long has had to avoid and could hide from because of Harry Reid. So I think it's important for everybody to remember that as we, even though we won the election, the field was exactly the same as it has been for the last 4 years, and that is the Senate controls the majority in the U.S. Senate, and so anything that gets done between now and the next Congress has got to have the signature, essentially, of Harry Reid and the president, and so. And I think that's the reality, and that's what makes it difficult. And so, and I'm not, I can't speak for leadership. I don't know what they were thinking in terms of putting this together. But it was not. I can guarantee you, no matter what got passed, we were never going to see something that had more of what we wanted, or I should say. Because Harry Reid and the president were not going to go along with it, and that is a reality that we have to keep in mind.
Congressman Hurd, a lot of us don't like these big omnibus, whatever you want to call them, bills with these riders in there that get passed in the dark of night. I mean, you look at the something in there for almost every lobbyist, big money, corporatist funded in there. What about this provision that I find to be outrageous, which is basically gutting a provision of McCain-Feingold and allowing individual donors to go from $32,000 apiece to a political party to $325,000? I mean, that looks to the average person like me looking at this, that looks like the Incumbent Protection Act to me. What was the deal with that?
I can't. Again, I'm not going to defend the deal that was done because I didn't vote for it, and so I guess though I would say that I'm not a big fan of McCain-Feingold, never have been. I think that all of these issues go to freedom of speech, and I think as long as you have disclosure, people should be able to express themselves without having the government tell them how much they can express themselves, and that's sort of my view on it. And so, but with that said, I would agree that anytime these bills are loaded because of the size and scope of them, 1,600 pages, and you can guarantee that there will continue to be things and will be illuminated. I think in the next few days of things that were tucked into that bill that weren't readily understood on their face, and I think it's absolutely a consequence of the size and scope of these bills, and the idea that the leadership puts it on our desk and gives us 48 hours to consider it. And I read the bill, but I can tell you it's very I think dangerous for the republic to have bills of this size that are very hard to comprehend, and have people being expected to vote on them.
Almost feels like we've been Grubered again. Congressman, a lot of the people, Republicans that voted for this, are saying, well, you know what? We didn't fully fund Homeland Security. We're going to fight. We're going to fight against President Obama's illegal amnesty on another day, whenever that day is, February, I would imagine. What's that fight going to look like?
Well, that is what they have said, and that was one of the concessions that I think was one, is that they were able to split the Homeland Security portion of the spending plan off from the rest, and something that 3 years ago never would have happened, or 2 years ago and 1 year ago never would have happened. And so that I think that is going to be an opportunity. I certainly hope it's going to be an opportunity. We shall see. We shall see. That's what leadership has said, is that they want to use that portion of funding because and I think that it stands to reason that you will be able to fight over the ability of the president to spend U.S. taxpayer dollars on carrying out his executive actions, and do so. It seems to me without the risk of actually shutting, having a risk of the whole government shutting down. And I think that there are, it's my hope that we'll see. I guess that's what I should say. I hope that we'll be successful. We will see whether or not we have the fortitude and we will have the skill to be able to do that. The field will be changed. We will have a new majority leader in the Senate to be able to help prosecute that, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And we'll also be interested to see the president's reaction. The president over the last 4 years that I've been in Congress hasn't had to engage with Congress at all, because Harry Reid defends him at every turn, and he can hide behind Harry Reid. Now, there's not that majority leader in the Senate to hide behind. He's going to have to engage with us directly, and it's going to be very interesting.
Congressman Hurt, there's some of us that believe that Speaker Boehner is really in favor of this amnesty order because it gets the issue for him off the table. He can go on to something else. And so that deep down he's fine with it so they can all move on. Am I wrong?
Again, I can't speak for him. I've never heard him say anything to suggest that he could be in favor of that. And I can just tell you from my own standpoint, and this is something that I say regularly, and that is that anybody who cares about the Constitution, anybody who cares about the rule of law, cannot be in favor of this activity. Anybody who is in the legislature, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, a socialist, an independent, a communist, no matter what you are, if you're in the Congress of the United States and you don't see the grave threat to having a president act unilaterally in this way without the express will of the people, is somebody who I think is not living up to is not abiding by their oath of office. So, again, I can't speak for the leadership. I can't speak for the speaker. But I would imagine whether he agrees with some form of immigration reform that I don't agree with or not, I would doubt that he would. I imagine he sees things, at least from an constitutional standpoint, the way I've described, because that's certainly the way I feel about it. And I wish there were more people on the other side of the aisle who looked at the Constitution and said, this is wrong. It doesn't matter what party the president is a member of. This is flat out wrong for the American people, and this is against the Constitution. And I wish there were more people on the other side of the aisle that looked at it that way.
So that's going to be the final word. Congressman from the 5th District of Virginia, Robert Hurt. Congressman, if people want more info, where do they go?
Hurt.house.gov, hurt.house.gov, and we appreciate the invitation to be on your program.